What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you guys through the ultimate guide to the fixtures basically. I know in the initial draft I mentioned that I wanted to do a video specifically on the fixtures in their entirety, and that's exactly what this video is going to be about. So initially we're going to be first covering FPL and how they kind of do their own fixture rating and the pros and cons of this. And spoiler alert, I don't really favor this method, and that's why I've come up with my own strategy and my own way of creating a fixture rating. And I'll be showcasing this method and you guys can do it on your own. We're then going to be looking at the best fixtures using this method for the opening 7 game week to kind of nail down those sides that you guys should be focusing on those initial drafts. And then finally, I'm going to be showcasing you guys a fixture ticker, not by my own creation, but one that I think goes a little bit more in depth and is slightly better. So stay tuned for that one towards the end of the video. But if that's something you guys are interested in, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So before we get into the first talking points of the video, I just wanted to mention to you guys that I have partnered with Fantasy Football Fix for the FPL 2021/2022 season. I spoke to them, and from a business and personal point of view, I really do agree with how they've managed their business. And not only did they give me a 65% discount, I have actually been using Fantasy Football Fix since I first got into FPL. So as you guys know, I'm super transparent on this channel. I'm never going to kind of promote something that I don't use or have used in the past. And as I've mentioned, I have been using them for a long time, so I'm perfectly happy with promoting this brand. 65% discount is the discount that they've managed to get for my followers, and you can use that by using the affiliate link down in the description below. Right off the bat, I'm not being paid to promote. The only thing I have is an affiliate link, and what an affiliate link is that if you guys decide to actually go on and get a premium subscription to the Fantasy Football Fix premium tools, then I do get a cut of that value. Now I know what you're thinking, why on earth did you ask for a 65% discount when that's going to reduce the cut that you get from that value? But it's not about that, it's about you guys becoming better FPL managers. And if some of the paid tools or the free tools, you must remember that Fantasy Football Fix has a whole load of free tools for those of you guys who just want to kind of not pay for something but rather get those free tools into your locker. But the paid tools are definitely more helpful, and if you guys do choose to support me and get the premium subscription, I do hope that those tools do come in handy. Throughout the preseason, I'm going to be using the tools to quite a large extent, so if you want to wait and see, maybe wait for some showcasing of the tools in action, that's perfectly fine. Just wait for the videos, as I'll be covering them, as I said, in quite an in-depth nature. But that's enough of the update. Let's get straight into the video. So going on to the first talking point of the video, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're first going to be looking at FPL and how they actually do the fixture rating system. So on the FPL website, if you guys haven't checked it out, what they basically do is they have a rating of 5 colors or 5 numeric values ranging from 1 to 5. So 1 signifies the easiest fixture in FPL and 5 signifies the hardest fixture. And in my entire career of playing FPL, I haven't come across a 1 rated fixture that often. And there's the same thing with the 5 rating fixture. I think this season, the only 5 rated fixture is going to be Man City away, and that almost eliminates 2 values right off the bat. So 3 values, 2 to 4, those are basically where the majority of sides do fit in. And I will say there's a slight kind of bias towards the 2 and 3 ratings. If you go on FPL and go to kind of any player selected, you'll see that the majority of teams fit into that 2 rated fixture. And that's where my first problem comes up with FPL, because let's just take that 2 category into account. You're going to have the worst team in the 2 and the best team in that 2 category. And the difference between those 2 sides, in my opinion, is quite a lot. So how I think FPL kind of runs this categorization is that they have a numeric interval, and if your side kind of whatever kind of algorithm they use, whatever formula equation they use, if your team fits into that, you fit into that specific category. So it's not really a relative thing, and that's where, as I said, I have a problem, because you have this large stack of teams in the 2nd and 3rd categories and you don't get a really good differentiation between them. So you don't actually know who has the better fixture or the worst fixture in that 2 rating. So that's why I think if they did more of a relative thing, if they took the 5 categories and then split the teams up relatively, so for example, if they have 5 categories, put 4 teams, as there are 20 teams in the Prem, so 4 teams each category, that gives us a little bit more of a distinction between the difficulty ratings. And that's why I think that if they had kind of a 10 value color, a 20 value color, that would be far more kind of profitable, and that's exactly what my own ranking does. So make sure that you guys stick around to see that. So the second thing about the FPL ratings is that I know that it is quite hard to give a specific squad a rating, especially with historic events. And that's where my second problem comes comes in, is that I think there is a lot more of an interpretation into the FPL rankings, and my opinion of a team might differ from their experts. And that's why if we look at the fixture ratings, I think Brighton are rated as a 2. And in my opinion, Brighton in the second half of last season were defensively outstanding. And that's why I would rate them probably a 4 or at least a 3. And that's why we come into this kind of contradiction. If you watched me in previous videos, I always talk about the sea of green when I look at players to bring in. And in actuality, it might not actually be a sea of green. In reality, it might actually be some mediocre fixtures, some 4s and 3s. But because FPL ranks these teams as 2s, we get a false image of good fixtures. And that's why I think, although this is a nice simple method to do, and it's probably more aimed at the common FPL manager, if you want to kind of get up a tier and become a little bit more broad, I think that you have to implement your own method or use one of another website or tool such as Fantasy Football Fix. But luckily in this video, I'm going to take you guys through both methods, first covering my own method and then second covering the Fantasy Football Fix fixture ticker. So let's get straight into it. So before we get into my own fixture rating, I wanted to give a little more background and context into how I created it. So first of all, I took it in 2 different scenarios. The first scenario was the entire last season as a whole, and then the second scenario was the last half of last season. And the reason I did this is that some teams actually started off quite badly, but improved as the season went on, and vice versa. Some started really well and kind of degraded as the season went on, and I think that that's more relative to us because those fixtures were a lot closer to the start of the 2021/2022 season. But I know there'll be a kind of an argument between which scenario is better, because some will argue that a full season is better because what's going to happen in this season? Some teams will start hot, some teams will start cold, and then we'll see some variation as the season goes on. So you can't really prepare for these kind of unexpected changes in the form of teams. So that's why I've covered both methods. So kind of fast forward, or maybe just watch both methods, whatever kind of floats your boat. And then now going on to how I actually created it, I took an offensive rating and a defensive rating for every respective team in the Prem. This will deal with obviously the promoted sides, and what I did there was I also took their stats from the championship last season because that just gives us a fair indication, but I did put in a difficulty rating. So as you know, the championship to Premier League, it's been quite a big jump. So what I did was I did a little bit of an analysis on how teams did in previous seasons getting promoted from the championship and how their stats were impacted. And the stats I looked for offense and defense were XG and XG against. Now I'm not going to get into the debate about XG. You either love it, you hate it, or you're kind of in the middle ground. I personally like it because I think it gives us a almost fair representation of what happened in that specific game without kind of the variance of a bad center forward not scoring, or maybe a clearance off the line that was impossible. And what I did there was I divided it by the number of games each respective team played. In the Premier League, this was going to be 38, but in the championship, I think it was about 42, 46, 48. I can't exactly remember, but don't worry, I did have it on the stat sheet, so you're not kind of getting inaccurate data. And that gave us an XG per 90 minutes. This is a good reflection as it kind of showed what the average was over every single game, and that gives us a nice little prediction method for the upcoming game week. So that's how I did it. Offense, defense, both got a rating, and now let's go on and see how the fixture ticker looked. So as I mentioned, going over the first 7 fixtures, I usually do 6 fixtures, so I decided to kind of spice it up a little bit for those of you guys who got a little bit bored about me talking about the first 6. And as you can see on the right side of the screen there, we've got the attacking and the defensive ratings. The one thing I will say about this kind of fixture ticker is that because the XG and XG against of the better teams usually is a lot higher, this kind of favors the better opposition. And that's why I think I have to modify this fixture ticker quite a bit, because I don't necessarily want it to just favor Liverpool, Man City, United, Chelsea. I want it to give me the best fixtures even of those smaller teams. And that you'll see coming up in a little bit. So starting off on the left hand side, we've got the teams and their respective fixtures from game week 1 to game week 7. I haven't included the fixture or opponent of the fixture on this specific table. What you guys can do is just maybe watch this video on one monitor and bring up the fixtures on your phone or something to give you guys a good indication of who the team is actually facing. What I did to get that rating or that value of this specific game was I took the attacking rating of Liverpool and I times it by the defensive rating of their opposition, which in this case in game week 1 is going to be Norwich. So how you get the value is you take the attacking rating of Liverpool 1.91 and then you times it by Norwich's defensive defensive rating, which is 1.83. And the higher the value, the better the fixture. You can see Liverpool have the best fixture in game week 1 with a 3.49 rating, so great fixture to kind of target. And what I did was I ranked each single game week against each other. Why I did this, instead of kind of going for every fixture as a whole, is that I wanted to show you guys what's the standout fixture in each respective kind of game week so that you can look at the captaincy options. What's nice about this kind of fixture ticker is that it gives you attacking and defensive ratings of each fixture. And what I mean by that is as long as you know what team is playing who, you can look at it from an attacking and a defensive point of view. So yet again, let's use the Liverpool versus Norwich example. So Liverpool from an attacking point of view have a 3.49, but from a defensive point of view, you just look at Norwich's rating because that's their attacking point of view, and that's going to be a 1.2. So defensively, Liverpool's rating is 1.2, which is actually quite respectable. So what you can do is just go through every single game, we can analyze it and kind of pick your squad. I've done this from an ascending order on terms of average over these 7 game weeks, and that's going to be the most right-hand column of the left-hand table. It's titled Score. And as you can see, Liverpool, Man City, United and Chelsea are heavily favorited over the first 7 game weeks. And this is what I was kind of talking about when I mentioned that it favors the better teams. And that's not exactly what I want my fixture ticker to do, because maybe Norwich have a great fixture and then I still want to target them. Whereas with this kind of fixture ticker, it really kind of punishes the lesser teams. One interesting thing to kind of point out though is that it does show how we should be focusing on the more stronger opposition, because over the entire season, these teams have better goals scored and less goals against. So just something to keep in your mind. Not many Man City, Chelsea options I've seen in many people's initial drafts. So maybe this is one of those kind of light bulb moments that we have. And this is one of those moments that hopefully lets us go high up in those FPL ranks. But this is the entire season. Maybe just pause the monitor, take a screenshot, whatever you guys want to do. This information is for your use. And maybe just comment down below if you want me to give any variations of the stats that I have posted and give you guys a bit more insight in how I did create it. Now going on to the last half of the season, and as I said in the introduction, this gives us a little more insight into fixtures that happen closer to the start of the new season. We have some changes in kind of attacking and defensive ratings. One thing I will note is that Chelsea's defensive rating is absolutely skyrocketed, and they're looking at a 0.62 rating, which is simply outstanding. Another thing to note is that Brighton, we spoke about Brighton's fixture being rated quite lowly on FPL's website, but here we see that the defensive rating is 0.87, which is 0.01, slightly worse than Man City's defensive rating, who had one of the best, if not the best, defenses over the entire season in the Prem last season. So this is something just to take into consideration. I won't kind of talk about this point too much because it's very similar to the entire season as a whole. We just have a little bit of changes in values here. But what I will note is that we have seen some resurgence of a team like a West Ham, who had a great end to last season. And I do think this is one of those teams, if they can keep up the form of last season, could be one of those teams that we do watch out for. So finally, going over the best fixtures, I've highlighted the attack here, not the defense, because you can simply just create your own tool and then sort it as I explain it. What I did for the best fixtures from an attacking point of view is that I sorted the XGA of the opponent. And what that is that's the expected goals against, or basically the defensive XG of that respective team. And then I sorted it according to score. Because theoretically, if an opponent has a worse XG, that means that you're probably more likely to score against them. And as you can see, there has been some variation in the table here. We now see Man United at that top position with surprise entries of Wolves and Newcastle. So not many people have Wolves and Newcastle assets, but this kind of fixture ticker and XG against maybe highlights that you guys should maybe consider one or two of their attackers. But this is one of the situations that I have seen over on Twitter. A lot of people are saying Raul Jimenez, if he is back, that could be one of those assets that you guys do target. And I can perfectly understand why when I do analyze these XG against analysis. So what I would kind of do with this fixture ticker is highlight not only your captaincy options, but also highlight some kind of threads of good XG against that your team might have. For example, a Brighton have relatively good XGs in a continuous sequence for quite a while. So that might be one of those attackers that you favor. Maybe a Morpay. I know not many people are looking at him, but I can understand why. Not really the best striker in the world, but maybe one of those other Brighton assets from an attacking point of view, besides the defense, could be on your horizon for that. So these are the best fixtures from an attacking point of view if you are going to be sorting by XG against. And the reason I actually kind of like this is that it doesn't highlight the better teams. It actually gives us some variation here. And Newcastle or Wolves, as I mentioned, didn't have the best season last year, but still they have some great fixtures if you just look at their opponents' ratings. So So finally, as I mentioned, going over a fixture ticker, not by me, but by another person, that's going to be Fantasy Football Fixtures fixture ticker. And the reason I like this is that it kind of takes away that negative that I had with my own fixture ticker, where it was highlighting only the stronger teams. We can see that Everton are here, Wolves, Brighton, Watford, Newcastle, Aston Villa. All of these teams have great fixtures, but the best fixture from an attacking point of view is actually going to be West Ham. I don't know about you, I was actually looking at Antonio a little bit, but now that I look at the fixtures, I'm heavily looking at an Antonio, or maybe going for another defender like a Bowen in the attack, because they have great fixtures from an attacking point of view. So yet again, this is the Fantasy Football Fixtures rating from an attacking point of view, and we can see some of the regular favorites here, United, Liverpool. Both of those sides look quite strong for the premium assets, but you can kind of filter in some more budget options from these other respective teams. Make sure you check out the website. You can also analyze the defensive ratings here, and also look at your own first drafts, defensive and attacking ratings of those respective players. So this is basically a wrap the video, guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. Got a whole bunch of content loaded up for this preseason, so make sure you hit that bell notification so that you are notified when I do drop a video. I'll be signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.